Today, life without plastic packaging is almost unthinkable. 450 million tons of plastics are produced every year. About 1/3 of these plastics are produced to become packaging. Plastic packaging comes with many advantages. It is durable, cheap, and lightweight. It keeps many of the products we consume safe, fresh, and clean, no matter whether it is food, beverages, cosmetic products, or medicine. But there is a side to plastics we usually don't see. Once we take the product from the packaging, it becomes waste. And less than 14% of this waste is collected for recycling. 32% of this packaging waste is leaked into the environment globally. As plastic packaging is typically only used once for a very short period, it's the dominant source of plastic waste. It contributed almost half of the global total of plastic waste in 2018. Waste leakage is a particular problem in low and middle income countries. In low income countries, 93% of all waste is leaked into the environment. Globally, plastics contribute 12% of this waste. Around 60% of all mismanaged plastic waste occurs in the Asia-Pacific region alone. It has particularly harmful impacts when leaked into the environment. Plastic pollution is a problem which is growing exponentially and will continue doing so as rising middle classes enter the market globally. Plastic production is estimated to quadruple by 2050. The impacts of plastics on our planet can be broken down into three main categories: environmental, social, and economic. Firstly, there are the environmental impacts of plastic waste. Under current growth rates, greenhouse gas emissions through plastic production and incineration will reach 56 billion tons of CO2 equivalent until 2050. This is 10 to 13% of our entire carbon budget if we want to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius global heating. Annual emissions through plastics have already reached 860 million tons of CO2 equivalent, more than the entire greenhouse gas emissions of Germany. When leaked into nature, plastic packaging waste degrades natural ecosystems and poses a threat to wildlife. Over 2,300 marine species have been observably impacted by plastic waste, often threatened by entanglement or ingestion of plastics. From polar bears to penguins, from humpback whales to loggerhead turtles, wildlife is at a risk from entanglement of plastic waste. Worryingly, ingested plastic debris has also been found in domestic animals such as camels, cattle, and goats, harming them. The ecosystem damage has strong impacts on human life. For example, the degradation of soils and coral reefs may decrease fertility and accelerate the erosion of coastlines. Plastic packaging waste also has significant social impacts. As plastic waste, and especially microplastic, is passed through the food chain from plankton to fish and birds, it ultimately lands on our plates, becoming an issue of public health. We now eat the equivalent of one credit card in plastic every week. More generally, inadequate and overwhelmed waste management systems can exacerbate the spread of diseases as a result of contaminated waterways and health issues through air pollution. For example, in 1994, the city of Surat suffered an outbreak of a plague-like disease caused by major flooding. It was a consequence of uncollected waste blocking the drains. The outbreak resulted in 56 deaths, 300,000 people fled the city in 2 days, and the country suffered as much as $2 billion in economic losses. However, in the next 18 months, the city administration managed to transform the city into one of the cleanest in the region. Another example. In 2000, in Quezon City, in the Philippines, part of a dump site collapsed on a slum community after heavy rains. The landslide killed nearly 300 people and left hundreds of families homeless and without a source of livelihood. The slope failure was the result of bad management of the dump site. Finally, packaging waste has serious economic impacts. Tourism and fishing industries are particularly hard hit. An estimated $1.3 billion are lost annually in the Asia-Pacific region in these industries alone due to plastic pollution. Municipalities are left alone in dealing with packaging waste. This results in excessive portions of their budgets going towards waste management. This leaves little money to spare for other public services such as education, health, or infrastructure. Simultaneously, approximately 15 million waste pickers work informally and often under precarious conditions. In India alone, 1.5 million people are estimated to live off waste picking. In a nutshell, the impacts of plastic pollution are devastating. In a larger picture, all of this comes down to one major problem. We live in a linear economy. Most plastics are produced from non-renewable resources, mainly oil, used once and then dumped in a landfill or leaked into the environment. John Duncan is WWF's global lead on No Plastics in Nature initiative. He works on a solution to this challenge. He believes the key to environmental, social, and economic sustainability in plastics lies in transitioning towards a circular economy model.
At WWF, we believe that it is possible to create a world in which there's no plastic in nature. One in which we eliminate unnecessary plastics, radically increase the amount of plastic that we collect and subsequently reuse or recycle, while at the same time moving towards more sustainable feedstocks for plastic production. We also recognize that these changes won't happen overnight, and they require the buy-in of all of the different stakeholders across the plastics value chain, from the consumer making purchasing decisions, to the business making packaging decisions, and ultimately to the government who decides how we regulate this entire system. We all have a role to play. So, a circular economy is one in which waste is designed out of the system. You're effectively moving away from what we currently have, which is a linear economy where we kind of take, make, and waste things. A circular economy keeps those materials within the system and ultimately, hopefully, enables this decoupling of our natural resources from economic growth. So, addressing plastic pollution requires us to really interrogate the waste hierarchy, the fundamental 3 R's. First of all, and most importantly, comes reduction. We don't have to manage waste that we don't create. And it's important to recognize that during the production of plastic, we create a whole lot of other environmental impacts as well, including things like greenhouse gases. So, the first goal is definitely the reduction or elimination of unnecessary plastics. Next on the waste hierarchy is reuse. Now, once we've eliminated all the plastic that we can, we obviously want to make sure that we are keeping the plastic that we need within the system for as long as possible. And reuse is associated with the lowest environmental impacts. So at one level, reuse is simple. It's taking your coffee cup with you when you go to the coffee shop. But at another level, it requires a fundamental kind of redesign both of the products that we use and the systems and business models that deliver them. And that's where really some of the most exciting things are happening today. After reduction and reuse comes recycling. Now, recycling is something that I think many people can identify with and understand it as one of the solutions to the plastic pollution problem. But it's really important to recognize where it sits on the waste hierarchy, below reduction and reuse, and also important to recognize that not all recycling is equal. We are trying to ensure that we recycle products into high-value plastics that enable us to close the loop. We don't want to see recycling of high-value plastics into low-value products or even fuel, for example. So recycling, again, a very important part of the solution, which also requires fundamental redesign for recyclability, but also significant investments in infrastructure. And this needs to come from businesses and from governments, and change in behavior from consumers like you and I.
In the end, this is what this course is about. We want to show you how to make the transition to a circular economy happen. We believe EPR is the way to go. I hope you enjoyed this module. Take your time to recap and see you in the next video.